As global pressure mounts like never before to end the war in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stands at a crossroads. His support for U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan could pave the way for a long-awaited breakthrough, but it may also push his fragile far-right coalition to the brink, with hardline ministers like Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir already signaling fierce resistance to any deal that stops short of total Hamas defeat. The coming days may determine not only the future of Gaza, but the survival of Netanyahu's government itself. The question is no longer whether a ceasefire is possible, but at what price Netanyahu is willing to pay for it. Will the far right fall in line, or will they bring his government down? Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Trump's declaration yesterday that Netanyahu accepted his Gaza peace proposal has put Netanyahu's far-right coalition in a tight spot. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich broke his silence today, calling the plan a resounding diplomatic failure. According to the Jerusalem Post, Smotrich warned that agreeing to the plan is an act of willful blindness that ignores every lesson of October 7th and will end in tears. Smotrich has set red lines for Netanyahu ahead of the meeting and may consider leaving the government. His party is expected to meet this afternoon to decide the next move. Meanwhile, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's party has yet to respond. Ben-Gvir previously resigned from the government in January over a deal with Hamas, only to return 2 months later after Israel resumed strikes on Gaza. Monday's meeting between Netanyahu and Trump, intended to clarify the Gaza war's fate, may instead clarify the timeline of the Israeli government's end. In an article published by Haaretz, a clear agreement on a peace plan forces Netanyahu to confront a fiercely resistant far-right coalition. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have strongly opposed any compromise, warning it threatens Israel's security and demanding Hamas's total defeat. Meanwhile, part of the Likud are urging him to resist U.S. demands, leaving him increasingly isolated within his own government. This clash over the Gaza deal comes as Netanyahu is already facing an October deadline for a contentious military service exemption law for ultra-Orthodox parties, increasing the likelihood of early elections.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's initial support for U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire proposal will reveal cracks within his own coalition, particularly from far-right ministers Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. The reaction may prove to be the ultimate deal breaker. While the plan promises an immediate ceasefire, the release of all detainees within 48 hours, and a phased Israeli withdrawal, hardline voices in the government are demanding much more. Smotrich, leader of the religious Zionism party, has outlined 6 red lines for his party's support. Chief among them, the complete dismantling and demilitarization of Hamas, a permanent Israeli military presence in Gaza, and the outright rejection of any reference to a future Palestinian state, though the proposal includes disarming Hamas and removing it from political power. It stops short of fully eliminating the group, something the far right considers unacceptable. They argue that as long as Hamas ideology and fighters remain, the threat endures. This places Netanyahu in a political bind. On one hand, international and regional pressure is mounting for a deal that could end the war and secure the return of the remaining detainees. On the other, any perceived compromise with Hamas risks fracturing his coalition and triggering political instability. At the heart of the debate lies a fundamental question. Is full military victory essential for Israel's security, or can a diplomatic resolution offer a sustainable path forward?
For more on this, we're joined from Cairo by Khaled Dawood, managing editor of Al Ahram weekly newspaper, and Ibrahim Darawi, writer and political analyst. Thank you both for joining me here on Think Tank. Khaled, let's start off with you first. Now, Smotrich called Trump's plan a resounding diplomatic failure and an act of willful blindness. Specifically, which elements of the Trump plan meant to facilitate the recovery of the remaining detainees violates the red lines that he has set out for this government?
Well, thanks, Shaham, for having me. I believe that Smotrich and people like Smotrich and other extremists in the Netanyahu cabinet, such as Ben Gvir, they've been insisting on the deportation of the Palestinian population from the Gaza Strip and the rebuilding of settlements instead of any talk about possible Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, even if this withdrawal is gradual and under conditions that are being set by Israel and to be approved by Netanyahu. But the concept of stopping the war before total annihilation of Hamas and preventing the extremist right-wing Israeli movement from reoccupying Gaza permanently and rebuilding settlements there would mount to them to some sort of surrender to Hamas after 2 years of war. So basically, it's the racist ideology that controls the minds of those extremist ministers, not just Ben Gvir and Smotrich, but other ministers and Likud members who do not want to see any end for this war, even though all parties tend to agree that the agreement that was announced by Trump and Netanyahu yesterday tilts very much towards Israeli understanding of the future of this war, and has been amended actually in order to satisfy the Israeli prime minister, and sometimes even contrary to the pledges that were made to Arab countries that were mediating in this agreement, such as Egypt, Qatar, and Hamas, concerning the speed of the Israeli withdrawal and the fact that it has to be a total full withdrawal.
Yes, sir, exactly. I mean, how does this not align? How does this not align with the vision for what these far-right, people want? I mean, it holds Israel almost virtually unaccountable for everything that's happened in the last 2 years, and it asks for the demilitarization and so forth. So how is this not in line with what Smotrich may want?
One, the Smotrich does not want to end the war. Smotrich wants the killing of the Palestinian people to continue endlessly because he believes that this is a kind of a messianic mission that the Israelis have to continue doing. But the issue is that, Smotrich and Ben Gvir are not necessarily capable of carrying out their threats to collapse this government or lead to its dissolution, because they know before anybody else, if they dissolve this government or force its collapse, they are going to be among the most to be hurt by this kind of decision, because if early elections were to be held in Israel, according to all opinion polls, maybe Netanyahu will continue to manage to win these elections, but certainly people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir will have very small chances to continue serving in the Knesset or in the Israeli government. So perhaps it's a kind of propaganda they are using to satisfy their own base, considering that in any case elections are due to be held in Israel next year. So they want to maintain their reputation as being the extremist of all extremists, and they don't want to see any deal with Palestinians, thinking that Israel should not bow to pressure from any party, including the United States itself. And even though, it remains to be seen. Now, this plan is very complicated and it has a lot of details that have not been settled yet. So it's not even sure that this agreement is going to work out. Probably they will need to wait until Netanyahu gets back to Israel to get to know from him the assurances he got from the U.S. President Donald Trump that this agreement will not violate the understandings he's had with his right-wing coalitions.
Okay, Ibrahim, if we can get your opinion here now. During the meeting with Trump, Netanyahu said that if Hamas does reject this proposal, Israel will, quote, finish the job by itself. Do you think this is the U.S. giving Israel the green light to continue escalating the ongoing genocide that has been happening in Gaza?
I think that Israel already had a green light for a genocide a while ago, and Israel hasn't been able to end Hamas or return their detainees, and these are their main goals that Israel is fighting. Has been fighting for 2 years for, and they haven't been able to reach any of their objectives. And so let's say that the American initiative is an initiative from an American person, a British, and an Israeli person. And so, yeah, they have to be in Israel's benefit. But this time, I think that Cairo and other Arab countries have presented some proposals to the American government so that the Palestinian factions, especially Hamas, to accept this, especially that a full ceasefire and Israel's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, having a detainees agreement, and not displacing the Palestinians, and not annexing the West Bank. I think that this is actually going somewhere and at some point. But the problem that we're facing today is Hamas's withdrawal from Gaza, and also the disarmament of Hamas. I think that these will be actual problems when it comes to the mediators, USA and Israel. And so here I think that Netanyahu's agreeing to stop a war is in his benefit, and USA's proposal is actually serves Israel, because Israel is now being attacked from the European countries especially. So let's be clear, they were expecting to face more issues, being held accountable in the International Court of Justice. They were accused of ethnic cleansing, a genocide, and so this is all waiting for Israel. And so for Trump to offer a proposal to end the war, he actually rids Netanyahu of all this. So yeah, Netanyahu will not be held accountable, and Palestinians have to unite. They have to follow the Arab-Egyptian vision to have a detainee exchange deal, and then try to get back their rights and condemn Netanyahu. And the third thing is a two-state solution. And let's be clear, if as Arab and Islamic countries and Palestine, with the international community as well, that recognize a Palestinian statehood, I think that Britain, Germany, France, Italy, and some European countries, I think that they are able to get the Palestinians their rights. And also the Arab countries, I think they have pressure cards. Let's be clear that what Israel did with striking Al-Doha made Israel in a real problem, and the whole world united against Israel and against their ego and the operations. And so this totally changed the game, especially with after what happened in the Gaza Strip, and striking Al-Doha as an ally to Israel and a friend to Israel and the USA. And so here the world had to unite against Israel. And so in this context and with this initiative, I think that it is a personal favor from Trump to Netanyahu. And so with the initiative and tapping out this initiative, even with the point that Cairo has proposed, and people from Trump's administration and the close friend of Netanyahu, and even in the USA, who are the first supporters of Israel and they are always defending Israel and not just Netanyahu. And so, yeah, in this context, I think that here the devil lies in the lines. I think that we will see more with the agreement and the 20-point plan. Let's not forget Smotrich that said that he refuses the plan altogether, and he threatened to dismantle the government, and also they actually made Netanyahu feel safe with this agreement. And so I think in the upcoming few hours or few days that we will have conditional endorsement from Hamas. And yeah, actually Hamas may endorse this agreement, but on the condition that Israel withdraws, because they cannot release the detainees and the deceased unless with a full withdrawal from Israel. And so we are still in the second day. And the other thing is who will take or govern the Gaza Strip after this ends. And let's talk directly. USA and Netanyahu put around 3 to 5 years to govern Gaza. When Cairo proposed this, it only proposed 6 months. And so here with Cairo's proposal, with Hamas endorsements and the factions endorsement, they only put 6 months. And so that the control is in the Palestinian government and other political issues. And so with the issue with the initiative from the USA is that it is not clear, and it lacks physical.
Yes, I understand, sir, that you're trying to say that the issues may be timelines and who will govern and so forth. But if we can also get Khaled's opinion there. Now, the plan describes a gradual Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. However, Netanyahu said via a video statement today that the occupation army will remain in most of the territory as part of the plan drawn up with Trump. How do you see this contradiction in the statements, especially now that you heard Ibrahim there talking about the idea that this proposal is basically a lifeline for the Israelis? Khaled, are you with us?
Is this question for me?
Yes,
I'm
it's
sorry.
you. Yes.
Yes, I mean, I want to point out to a very controversial point that's been announced in the 20-point plan by Netanyahu and Trump yesterday concerning the fact that there are no deadlines, no clear deadlines for the Israeli withdrawal from the occupied Gaza Strip. Besides the fact that there is one clause that basically refers to the fact that Israel will remain present in a so-called buffer zone for the foreseeable future and until all the Israeli conditions are met. And I've just been reading, we have a report on Axios, which has very good access to the White House and to the Israeli government, noting that some of the Arab countries that were negotiating with Trump have expressed unhappiness with some of the changes that have taken place to the plan they agreed to with Trump during their meeting a week ago, particularly concerning the deadlines for the withdrawal and the presence in the so-called buffer zones, which include, of course, along the border between Egypt and Gaza, known as the Salah ad-Din corridor, or the area of Rafah. Egypt has made clear from the beginning that it would not tolerate a permanent Israeli presence on its border because this violates the Camp David agreements and also violates other agreements that were reached between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. In all practical terms, and in light of what Netanyahu mentioned yesterday on the fact that Israel will maintain a permanent security presence or occupation presence in Gaza, we've been reading that new negotiations are going to start to provide more details on the issue, particularly of the withdrawal of the Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip. But the way the things stand right now, the plan, and unfortunately very much tilting towards Netanyahu's positions on the presence of the Israeli troops. Before this agreement was announced, There was a meeting for about 6 hours on Sunday between Netanyahu and President Trump's personal envoy, Steve Witkoff, as well as his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, in which Netanyahu obviously introduced many amendments that the Arab side were not informed of and the Hamas side was not informed of before the announcement of the plan. I mean, again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not just the issue of the withdrawal. It's the issue of this so-called international stabilization force, which is supposed to be made up of Arab and international contributors along with Palestinians in order to be responsible for the security in Gaza. Practically speaking, we haven't heard so far of any announcements by Arab or Muslim countries saying they are going to be ready to send troops in Gaza. And some Arab and Muslim countries believe that these kind of international stabilization force will have more of an advisory role while giving more authority to Palestinians themselves, whether a new police force that's being trained by Egypt or Qatar, or in coordination with the Palestinian Authority. So even though the plan has some positive aspects in terms of Trump's announcement that the war should end, that Israel will not annex Gaza, there remains to be many complicated issues concerning the schedule of the withdrawal of the Israeli troops, considering Netanyahu's own stand, and who will govern exactly Gaza, what role will this international stabilization force has. I mean, these are all questions that remain to be open. And as Mr. Darawi mentioned, we're still waiting at the same time for Hamas official response, which has not come through. And in light of the threat that was made by Trump and Netanyahu, that in case Hamas does not agree to this plan, this will practically mean maintaining this genocide policy and war crimes that the Israelis are committing in Gaza. And we've seen, Rihab, that even as the agreement has been announced, the killing did not stop in Gaza. Today, we have over 40 Palestinians who've been killed so far. Israeli tanks continue to proceed close to the center of Gaza City. So I guess we will still need to wait and see until we get a better understanding about how this agreement is going to be carried out.
Okay, now Ibrahim, you heard Khaled there talking about the idea of being major issues. There are major issues in the plan itself, and you've also stated this as well. Now, critics have argued that Trump's plan avoids pressing the Israelis to end the occupation, as you've also stated. Is Washington deliberately doing this to somehow sidestep or, protect the Israelis from any sort of accountability, in addition to possibly delaying, postponing, or even trying to end the idea of a two-state solution?
Yeah, I must reiterate that the US aid isn't about a two-state solution right now. They don't care for it now. But Israel's benefits come first, and we saw that Netanyahu was in trouble. Basically, he couldn't go to France or any countries that respect the law because he is condemned, he is accused, and he could be put in jail. And so any countries that have to do with the International Court of Justice, Netanyahu cannot deal with them. And so to save face, basically they put this plan. But I think the major prize for the Palestinians is a ceasefire, and so we must confirm this, and this is what Cairo has been trying to do: ceasefire, providing humanitarian aid, reconstruction, and then a two-state solution. And I think that the Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, they have made it clear we are talking about mediators and balancing countries here, especially after striking Al-Doha. Everyone has a problem, and and we need real solutions and an apology that Qatar didn't mediate and weren't going to mediate until Netanyahu apologized to Qatar, and what actually happened. He apologized to them, and we can build on this foundation. But are we being delusional that the USA can trick Netanyahu like it's tricking the Palestinians? No, the Palestinians have been long tricked up till this moment, and so the problem here with diplomacy and politically is stopping the war. This is the main issue here. And so, yeah, we need a clear vision and a formal opinion, which what happened from the Arab and Islamic countries that welcomed Trump's initiative to stop the war, and there is the opinion of the peoples. Everyone is refusing Trump's control and administration of the Gaza Strip, and this weird combination that the peoples of all countries are thinking of as occupation of an Arab and Islamic country. We cannot have an Israeli occupation and then have another American Britain occupation. But here, always the diplomacy wants to take advantage of any of the current victories, like a ceasefire, humanitarian aid, reconstruction, and even disarmament of Hamas. Hamas doesn't have arms. Israel said this, that they ended Hamas, and they ended around 75% of Hamas. But forcing this Hamas out of Gaza is a catastrophe, because Hamas is the Palestinian people, basically, and I think that the Palestinian factions will not allow them to be forced or isolated from other countries. So this is and so, yeah, they're talking about arms that they know nothing about. And here Cairo took pledges from Hamas that they won't be there in the second day of a ceasefire, so saying that Hamas will not be there at all and will not have any arms. This is agreed upon already, and they had Hamas pledges to reach a ceasefire. Around 100 Palestinians are killed every day, and around 1,000 or even a couple thousand are injured every day. We're talking about lots of martyrs and injured. This, not to mention the people who are missing. So yeah, no one can imagine what Israel is doing. There is a collective genocide. And so what the diplomacy has reached today, the Arab diplomacy has reached today, I think that they will pressure Hamas to accept this, because this is the last solution, basically, because the far-right coalition want to isolate the Gaza Strip and force and displace all the civilians in the Palestinian Rafah and Mawasi. And you're talking about a third to fourth of the whole Gaza Strip area. And so here
your point there, sir, is clear that yes, it is the first priority here is to basically end the genocide. Now, Khalid, if we can get your opinion here as well, if Netanyahu already knows that his far-right coalition will push back against any Gaza peace plan, did he accept Trump's proposal because he fears losing his greatest ally more than losing his own government, or is it a tactic whereby he's going to say, yes, I accept the deal, in the hopes or that Hamas will not accept this deal?
I think Mr. Trump would not have announced the agreement yesterday, except if he had some assurances from the Arab countries mediating with Hamas, such as Egypt and Qatar and Turkey, that there is a chance that they would accept this agreement. I mean, unfortunately, the problem, Riham, is the record and the history of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has, if you've listened to his speech in front of the United Nations General Assembly, he lives in his own world. I mean, he sees all Palestinians as enemies. He said he will not allow the world to, and I'm quoting him, to shove a Palestinian state into Israel's throat against its will. So, I mean, the world is going in one direction, and Netanyahu continues to stick to his extreme right-wing ideas that he shares, actually, with the right-wing parties in his coalition. Maybe the right-wing parties are more outspoken, people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, but there is no question that Netanyahu believes in the same extremist ideas, and we've heard from him, I mean, that he believes he's on a historic and religious mission to achieve the so-called Greater Israel, and his, kind of flexing his muscles that he managed to defeat Iran and all its proxies in the region, and he wants to establish Israel as the, kind of hegemonious partner in the region, or the country in the region, setting its conditions on everybody else. So, I mean, probably the fear is from Netanyahu himself, but I mean, internally speaking, Netanyahu is very skillful in playing parties and coalition partners against each other, and and of course the amendments that he has introduced to this plan, as you've mentioned, would make Hamas decision very difficult to make, because again, this agreement in the general way it was written lacks a lot of details and a lot of illusions, to be honest, as well. I mean, Gaza's flattened and totally destroyed. So to speak about, establishing high-tech zones or free zones and, allowing the Hamas leaders to leave, and while others who give up violence will be allowed to stay. These are things that are, practically speaking, are not going to happen except in a very long time and through a very complicated process. So probably Netanyahu, by announcing this agreement, he has also placed through the amendments he introduced the seeds for its possible failure in case Trump did not maintain strong pressure on his close ally and friend Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes, your point there is clear, sir. Thank you so much, but we're out of time. Khaled Dawood and Ibrahim Darowi, thank you both for your insights and your analysis, and thank you for joining me. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils a very complex world we live in. Thank you for watching. I'm Ham Morsi. Stay tuned for more here on Qnews.